Alien, the sci-fi horror classic by Ridley Scott. With just his second movie, Ridley Scott created a beloved masterpiece, which has stood the test of time and influenced pop culture to a great extent. Of course, he wasn't alone in creating this piece of art, but he was the director. The groundwork was laid by the late great Dan O'Bannon, who came up with the story and together with Ronald Shusett wrote the screenplay. There is some discussion about how much producers David Giller and Walter Hill influenced the script, but as it doesn't feel like a cowboy movie, I think there is mostly still Dan O'Bannon's vision on paper. But the look of the movie is also very important. The designs by H.R. Giger and Ron Cobb have been burned into pop culture. The look of the spaceships, doors and technology show a futuristic take on sci-fi and space travel, while the alien itself and the creatures like facehuggers, chestbursters and eggs were created by Giger, and so his typical nightmarish biomechanical approach with obvious sexual influence are present. Just look at the original design of the alien head. It's not exactly subtle. In the movie, the creature is fortunately more restrained, as is the acting of the cast. There is no over-the-top performance or over-dramatic situations, just appropriate to see these relatively normal people in this extraordinary situation. And they have quite some great actors actually. Sigourney Weaver, who would become a female icon of the horror and action genre, is here the space final girl, trying to keep a cool head and the situation under control. But there are other great actors as well. John Hurt, Harry Dean Stanton, Tom Skerritt, Yaphet Kotto and Bilbo Baggins himself, Ian Holmes, who was dug up for a weird CGI cameo for Alien Romulus, which I have already reviewed. If you want to check out my video, you can find it on this channel. That all sounds pretty good, but what exactly was Alien all about? Well, it's a relatively simple story actually, but that's probably what makes it that effective. The crew of a commercial spaceship, the Nostromo, is returning to Earth when they are prematurely woken up, as the board computer called Mother has picked up a transmission. Due to company policies, they start investigating the transmission and land on the planet LV-426. There they find the origins of the transmission. A spaceship of alien origins has sent a message, and the crew seems to consist out of very tall anthropomorphic extraterrestrials that are now mummified. But there's more on the ship. Hundreds, if not thousands of eggs that were stored in the ship. And one of these eggs hatches, and a creature jumps out of the egg. The spider-like creature is grabbing one of the Nostromo crew members, covering his face and not letting go of it. They bring the crew member back on board of the Nostromo against Ellen Ripley's advice, and they don't know what hell they just brought on board. It's a great start. Most of the movie follows the crew learning more and more about the aggressive and otherworldly creature that will soon lurk the spaceship. From the egg to the facehugger to the chestburster, to the alien itself, which will terrorize the crew, killing them one by one. The ship soon turns into a ghost ship with a dangerous predator on board, and the secret agenda by a well-known company is soon revealed, as well as the presence of an android manipulating the events on the ship. And I just love everything about it, to be honest. The alien is lurking, luring and stalking its prey on board. And the alien is just so insanely dangerous. Its acid blood is burning through the ship. It has claws, immense strength and a tail which basically ends with a spear tip, impaling unsuspecting victims. It is also very quiet, hiding in the endless dark places of the ship, between the pipes, hoses or other equipment of the ship, where it can blend into the environment perfectly. And the crew is not consisting out of scientists or marines. It's just crew members who have to face the possibly biggest threat which exists in space. And they are probably the smartest people who encounter the alien, at least in these movies. They work with what they have to fight off the aliens and have to get imaginative. It's also just so well made. There are a few jump scares, but those are very well set up and never feel cheap. The effects still mostly hold up, but watching a horror movie from the 70s, which still holds up this well, is just incredible. That's probably also why the director's cut barely changes anything of the movie. If you compare it to other Ridley Scott director's cuts, like Kingdom of Heaven, which adds a lot of scenes and cuts the movie differently. He obviously didn't see the need to do it here, and I agree. And also there's a cat, which is always nice. I'm not sure if Ripley even likes the cat though. It's an interesting world, an interesting creature with the alien, and an interesting character with Ellen Ripley, who is trying to hold things together, and is more stable than some of the characters that we meet in later movies. I could talk longer about this movie, going through all the details, but to be honest, why should I? If you have watched this movie already, you should just rewatch it. If you haven't seen it yet, I don't want to spoil anything for you and would just recommend watching the movie. Just experience the movie which started it all and see how simple and effective it is, especially compared to the bloated mess that some of the later movies have become. Alien is as close to perfection as it could get, and in my opinion, none of the sequels ever reached this quality, and not surprisingly, Alien gets a perfect score of 10 out of 10. The immense success of Alien of course led to a huge multimedia franchise, as we know, but the sequel movies usually have a couple of years between each movie's release. So it would take a couple of years until the sequel was released and drastically changed directions. This time without the involvement of Ridley Scott, but still with David Giller and Walter Hill producing. This time James Cameron took over as director and writer, who up to this point was mostly working as production designer and special effects designer, but also directed the disaster Piranha 2 and came fresh from the success of the action and sci-fi cult classic The Terminator. According to rumors, Jimmy Cameron simply walked up to a whiteboard and wrote Alien on it. Then he wrote an S on it, made it a $sign, which convinced the producers to give him the project. Of course I don't know if it is true, but I like to believe so. Aliens changes directions drastically, as I said, and turns the slow burn horror movie into a sci-fi action spectacle. Ripley wakes up from cryo-sleep and is suddenly on a Weyland-Yutani ship. She has been sleeping for 57 years, her daughter has already died in the meantime, and after a terraforming process, LV-426 has become a colony. Hadley's hope. And no one believes her story of the alien, until there are reports of a dangerous incident on the colony. Ripley is forced to get back to LV-426 and accompany a couple of colonial marines and androids by Weyland-Yutani. Soon the marines and Ripley are stranded at the colony together with a young girl who seems to be the only survivor of the Hadley Hope disaster. Well, actually the disaster is still in progress. A lot of aliens and marines are getting slaughtered and we get a lot of great lines. And some iconic scenes and weapons. And while it has good directing, great effects and some great lines and fantastic actors, I just don't like it as much as the original. I know, but don't get me wrong, this is a good movie, but it's not a masterpiece for me overall. Sure, the effects are great, the actors and some of the lines are great, but I have some issues with the movie in general, especially story, and the direction it took from the original. When compared to the original, the aliens don't feel as threatening and dangerous. In the first movie there's a single alien that will frighten you for the entire runtime. Here they are just hordes and are attacking in groups. They could have easily just used zombies that are toxic or something, it would almost be the same. The aliens don't feel as threatening and dangerous here. In the original we have one alien that will terrify you for the entire time. Here we have a huge group and they attack also in packs and get easily killed by the marines and their gadgets. It's more similar to a zombie movie in my opinion than what we had with the first movie. Which isn't bad in and of itself, but they just feel less threatening in my opinion. The acid blood also seems to be neglected for some scenes. For example, when they run over an alien and the car doesn't seem to take any damage. Sometimes when they shoot the alien they do get hurt, but other times they don't. It's kind of inconsistent. Especially if you think of the first movie and how the acid blood just burned through several floors of the spaceship. Also, the scenes when they are stuck in a room and use sentries to kill hundreds of aliens is seemingly a bit odd. In the first movie, a single alien was acting quite intelligently, but here they are just running into their death. There is some kind of threat for the people in the room that the time will run out at some point, but it really doesn't feel that dangerous. And when they are ambushed by hundreds of aliens coming through the vents, they are able to flee quite easily. The alien was shown to be the perfect predator in the first movie, but here they just act so stupid. They try to overrun the Marines as a brainless onslaught of aliens. They just run into the barrels of guns and get shot into pieces. They don't lurk, they don't stalk, they don't lure. They just run into their death. There's nothing really scary about the movie. It's not even trying to be, I think. It's trying to be something different. But also as an action movie, it doesn't really convince me, to be honest. There are cool scenes, but seeing them just taking out aliens as if they were zombies feels a bit cheap. Unfortunately, that's the way most of the sequels try to go as well. The automatic weapons also feel a bit cheap. I mean, the pulse rifle, while sounding overpowered, is at least manually used by the soldiers and they have to aim. But things like the sentries and the smart gun just feel like cheating. It makes you wonder how they even end up being so overwhelmed by the aliens. The way the Marines fight and act, especially in the beginning, makes them look like amateurs as well, in my opinion. Sure, they had to thin out the herd, so to speak, to make what follows more tense in the movie, but it's really kind of dumb at times. But I don't hate the movie, not at all, even if it maybe sounded like it by now. While I don't think it's as good as the original, it's still the best sequel to Alien and set up a lot of world building which I actually quite liked. We learn much more about the world of the Alien universe, the aliens hierarchy with the Queen, we get a better idea of the influence of Weyland-Yutani, we meet the colonial Marines and learn how people live, as we see some of them in Hadley's Hope. There are some great lines, as I said, and nice ideas, and I really loved the practical effects. This movie also cemented Ellen Ripley's reputation as an action hero and an overall tough gal. The cast is also fantastic. Sigourney Weaver reprises her role as Ellen Ripley and is joined by Lance Henriksen, who plays the android Bishop, Bill Paxton, who is fantastic as Hudson, Michael Biehn, who plays Hicks, who are both colonial marines, and there's also Paul Reiser as Weyland-Yutani representative. It's a cool movie, it's a fun movie, it has great world building, but as I said, it took the franchise into a direction I didn't like too much, and which overall I don't think helped the franchise. Not every Alien movie has to be an action flick, but that's basically what we got from here on. It did influence many games, and playing colonial marines in games is a lot of fun. Well, in most cases.
Had all this expectation. It's one of those expectation management things. So it was like a 7.5 game, which I think would have been fine for an Aliens game.
And with all that said, Aliens gets a 7 out of 10.
Aliens. This time, it's war.